This is Thursday Night Mythology. You know we love to talk about there's no better night of the week than Thor's Day to discuss mythology, and that's what we're going to be doing here today. I got my man Teanis Tillmon who's going to come in and join us here just a second. I'm just kind of getting it kind of prepped up here. I got my man. You know how it is. Okay, so we're live. Let me get him on the phone. We're going to talk about this new movie Morbius. It's coming out from Marvel Comics, starring Jared Leto. My man knows a lot about this particular character, so let's bring him in here and see what he's got to say about it. I hope he's ready. I hope he's on today. I hope he's home right now. I didn't even tell him I was going to call him. You guys knew I called him, right? Yeah, I told him. We already talked about all this stuff. We always talk about what we're going to do first. See anybody in the live stream yet? Not yet. It's all right, though. We're going to like it ourselves. My brother.
Greetings, my brother.
My brother, how are you today? How are you today?
How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I was just kind of prepping the audience that we're doing our Thursday night modern mythology, right?
Yes.
Thor's Day, right? Thor's Day is the best day to talk about mythology, right?
Thor's Day, exactly.
Right. So everybody, we're in here today, modern mythology. My man Teanis Tillmon, and today we're talking about Marvel Comics' new movie Morbius, which is dropping, I think, in 2022. I think it's spring of 2022 this is coming out.
Yes.
And I was kind of surprised when you introduced this to me because Morbius isn't the most well-known Marvel character.
That's correct.
And it kind of made me think of, what's my man, Venom, who also wasn't a major character in the comic books, was kind of a supplementary character, but had some pretty good success on the big screen.
Yes.
So I did a little research about Morbius because we decided last week we were going to talk about this. So I got into a little bit of his past. I knew a little bit about him. He was, to me, always represented as a Spider-Man villain, and then had, of course, some tanglings with Blade because he was a quote-unquote vampire. But he becomes a vampire very differently than the normal representation of vampires.
Yes.
What do you want to tell us about this character?
Well, based on the research, he was a doctor, a chemist, or sometimes he was a physician.
Yes.
And he had a rare blood disease. And he went through some type of transfusion that had to do with bats. But what I'm understanding is that based on his story, he's not like a normal vampire. In other words, they call him the living vampire.
Yes.
Okay. I'm still trying to quite understand exactly what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Because Blade is a living vampire also.
Right.
So I'm trying to understand exactly how to interpret what the living actually means.
Right.
Yeah. So I have looked at a lot of what I saw of Morbius, and of course the animated series. Mm-hmm. I've watched him in action, and I'm trying to understand. He's not, a villain necessarily.
Right.
I want to say.
Right.
But he's having this craving and hunger for blood all the time.
Mm-hmm.
In the animated series, they show him sucking plasma through his hands.
Okay.
He has these little circles on his hands, so and that's how he's able to deal with that. But he has this overwhelming drive for blood all the time.
Right.
Okay. That's his deal. So he's not like a normal vampire. He can also move around during the daytime. I understand to some ability. He's not subject to any type of vampire garlic and other things like some of the other weaknesses that vampires have. So he's different from Blade, but I did see him go toe to toe with Blade, and I was a little surprised that he's actually stronger than Blade in some regard. Now that's interesting.
Yeah, most definitely.
And my thing is, Blade has been around longer than he has, from what I understand. as far as him being a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
He gets these powers, but Blade has been around fighting vampires for a while.
Right. Right.
So I'm trying to understand what makes him a different vampire than the vampires he's already fought. I'm talking about the strongest of vampires.
Yeah. Yeah. How would this guy who doesn't have all the I guess quote unquote kind of supernatural aspects, how does he hang with Blade when Blade's taking on, the baddest of them?
Exactly. Some of the baddest vampires we're talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So I have watched a lot of the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
I have did a little back study. I haven't seen the movie yet. Of course, it's coming out in January.
January, okay.
Yeah. So I am anticipating to see more than what I've heard about him. But based on the character and what I have seen, I am impressed on his abilities, because as far as what I've seen, Dracula and some of these other people are just more powerful vampires.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just from my understanding of dealing with understanding who all these other characters have been over time, and I just I'm a little surprised at what I see.
Well, okay, one of the interesting things about particularly this character is that the mythology behind vampires has been changing and evolving, I think, particularly in like the last 20 years. I mean, first off, as a culture and a country, we've probably done more movies about vampires than anything else, right? America has a complete obsession with vampire mythology. And maybe because vampire mythology is relatively new compared to other mythologies, people are taking a lot of licenses with how you can change characters or how you can change the attributes of vampires, because now they've slowly been eroding. You can walk around in the daytime. I mean, even with what was that Twilight series?
Yes.
Right? He could walk around. I mean, it's supposed to be overcast day or something like that. He was kind of walking around in the daytime.
Yes. I was wondering about that myself, actually.
Yeah.
Looking at the series, I'm like, okay, so what kind of vampire is he? Because normally a vampire would not be out in broad daylight.
Right.
Okay, so, and he's able to deal with the werewolves during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
He's able to do all these things like a normal human being. So is this a Morbius type of attribute?
Right.
That was my wondering about that. So I personally, I did not like the Twilight series.
Yeah, I didn't like Twilight series at all. Yeah, it wasn't my speed.
Yeah, it was my speed. I get it. I did watch it though to try to grasp the concept of it and everything. But vampires is what I'm used to seeing as far as what they're able to do, as far as their character roles and how they've evolved over the years. To me, just didn't match up. And I give you a good example. The Underworld series is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, totally different vampires.
Right. Yeah.
Totally different thing. And it was just something that was, to me, it was like a night and day type of thing.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, because to me, the fact that the vampire was always, killed off by sunlight, or always allergic to sunlight, had a lot more symbolism, because it clearly divided creatures of the night from creatures of the day. And that's one of the most persistent ideas in human mythology. Night creatures, the moon creatures versus the sun creatures. Even though the moon and the sun have that, symbiotic relationship, or even, in a lot of mythologies, the sun and the moon are shown as almost lovers with each other. But the creatures of the night and the creatures of the day have always been opposed. So it's kind of odd that they're kind of taking that. You're kind of taking that away from vampires, because that was their most important symbolism. To me, it seemed like that was the thing about vampires.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess for me, I am a I like facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always do research on facts, and vampires is seen as blood sucking killers,
Right.
or but in actuality they're not.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing I'm really trying to understand,
Right.
and it's always have been this way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and really, okay, in the creature world,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's over 1,300 different types of species of bats.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 3 of those species that actually are bloodsuckers.
Right.
3
Right.
out of 1,290 some odd bats species. So they're not like that. So I've watched, we're talking about from Batman on.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to make the connection on how they're able to turn into what they're able to turn into, as far as the Morbius character is concerned, as far as the Underworld series is concerned, on how they have evolved them into what they are.
Right.
Okay. So again, I'm a person that, I'm not saying I'm playing, devil's advocate and stuff like that, but I like facts.
Right.
Because I'm trying to figure out understanding the vampire lore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from Blade on up.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so I want to see exactly what Morbius is going to do. I've seen him battle Spider-Man on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
and they go toe to toe all the time.
Yeah.
He's just, you know what I mean? And I guess, in my opinion, I'm trying to wonder, is Spider-Man stronger than Blade then?
Right. Right.
That's
because they're neutralizing a lot of abilities to make the fights good in the comic book when maybe it shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and the reason why I have to keep going back to Blade again is because we're talking about he's been he's been at the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
When it comes to battling vampires.
Yeah.
How does he, cannot deal with Morbius in the way that he should?
Well, one thing that comic book stories do is, obviously for their agenda, but they a lot of times discount experience, right? So that was kind of always the thing with vampires, was the older they were, the more powerful they were, the more in control of their abilities they were, and that's what made them more formidable. But they kind of want to switch that and just say, okay, so Blade's been this warrior for all these years, and this highly skilled warrior. You don't all of a sudden get some powers, and now you're hanging with Blade. That's not how it's going to work. Spider-Man was a little bit more of a neophyte in actual fighting, so whatever. But overwhelmingly, he should have dominated that character. But obviously, they got to make it a little more exciting.
Yes,
Yeah.
I guess that's what my thought process is. Because if you're fighting somebody like Vlad the Impaler,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the top. That's the top of the food chain. Vampires.
Right. Yeah.
And in my opinion, he's stronger than Morbius.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, this is just my whole thing. And in the whole comic book series, in the whole aspect of Blade, he's actually has gone toe to toe with people like him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to understand what the problem is.
Yeah, it is a weird. Like I said, with vampires, I don't know why people have taken. It's one of the few characters that has really been changed. We really haven't changed the werewolf, right, over time. The Frankenstein monster has. I guess we've had different iterations of Frankenstein. I'm thinking about Penny Dreadful, right, which was a great series, and Frankenstein was different in that series, in that he was an intelligent and sensitive being, but still had the same, weaknesses and frailties.
Yes.
Right. Out of all that specific type of myth, vampires are the ones that have gone through the most changes in terms of obviously giving them abilities. I watched, like I said, True Blood was a really good example where they got a little nutty with. But then they held to some really strong principles. They held on to, the aversion to light, right? I think they still dealt with silver and garlic. Were still
Yeah.
parts of their world,
Right.
and that always made sense because we always talk about why do these things work? Well, if we look at silver has always been seen as in lots of mythologies a purity metal. That's really what it was. It was always a
Yeah.
purity metal and was always associated with blood flow. Even
Yeah.
outside of vampirism, people tell you to wear silver bracelets helps your blood or energy flow.
Right.
And garlic is also known as a remedy for blood ailments. If you got high blood pressure, eat more garlic, helps your blood flow. So those
Yeah.
things made sense if we were talking about someone who has a blood affliction or a bloodlust.
Yeah, I guess if you were to think of it that way, yeah. But again, I mean, we're talking about, you know, okay, so yes, the silver is absolutely true, but also the silver was how could I put it, the kryptonite for werewolves.
Right. Right. It absolutely is. Absolutely is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Vampires had a serious problem with the garlic and daylight, and then they had the stakes, and stuff like that. But the werewolves is the one that really had the silver.
Right.
Really,
Yeah.
That was something that really stuck with all throughout the werewolf series. I guess the franchise, the werewolf franchise.
Yeah.
So, but Morbius is he none of these things affect him.
Yeah, which kind of brings us to the whole point about how you're kind of changing vampires, essentially. I mean, because the other example I would give who suffered the same way, in fact, far more than anything else, and we'll have to do a whole series on that too. But the zombie, right? The zombie has completely changed from what zombie in ancient stories was to what zombies in Zombieland are now.
Yes.
And that's what I feel like is going on with vampires. And, my own interest in vampires notwithstanding, I still like hanging on to the original stories because the original stories tell us something about the people. Tell us about what they thought about the world. That somehow they made these associations between a vampire and sucking blood and, having to sleep in a tomb and even like the sexual kind of nature of vampires.
Yes.
So I still think those things are kind of important elements to hang on to, although I do like to see stories, evolve and take on new meaning. So I guess I'm just kind of torn between those representations.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I'm a old school person.
Mm-hmm.
I like sticking to the original stories and them not changing, and this is why. Because once you start changing those things, I'm almost wondering, what are you actually doing to the story, to the vampire story? Okay, and I'll give you a great example. I sent you some information on Akasha.
Yes, yeah, I did look at that. I looked at that today. Yes.
Okay, Akasha is the oldest. She is the mother of vampires.
Yes.
And she still has the same issues.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you going to switch from that to Morbius?
Right. Right. Because that is your foundation, and that's a great mythology. It's an incredible story, right? And so it definitely has been attacked by this type of a character. And I think this movie's going to be great. Like, honestly, you sent me over the trailer. I'm going to drop the link in the comment section, in the description. You got to check this trailer out. The movie looks incredible. It's Jared Leto, who we all know is a really good actor. So we know this movie's gonna go far, and it will impact how people see vampire mythology.
Yes. I am not, again, I'm not knocking it for what it could be or maybe. I'm just, a person that since Queen of the Damned came out with, of course, Aaliyah,
great movie,
playing the cop. She did an outstanding, excellent
incredible job.
And I would really like to see something like that, for an example, in Underworld.
Right.
Okay, or something like that, where she encounters Blade, or okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something that explains, like, I'm the mother of all vampires.
Right. Right.
The foundation of everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you change from something that's so foundational?
Yeah, that I mean, there is some audacity involved in that. There is some audacity to take, to take a story like that and ignore it to kind of circumvent and come up with something new.
And you know what I'm going to say here in a couple of minutes, but this goes all the way right back to ancient Kemet.
Right? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm always, fishing for that, because this foundational thing. Okay, so where do we get this from?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Akasha is from the city of Sumer,
Mm-hmm.
but she marries her husband, who is an ancient Kemet.
Yes.
She comes in ancient Kemet, she rules in there, and this is the mother of vampires.
Yes.
Okay, now she was not an evil person.
No.
But from all the vampires that we know of up until this very point, what is their character?
Yeah, they typically don't start off, yeah, with the Vlad the Impaler was actually, in his eyes, a hero, right? He was defending his homeland. Even infamously, Lestat was someone who didn't start off that way, that he was changed. So most of the time when we see vampires, they're almost a victim themselves.
In some regard, yes. Well, the story of Vlad is a very interesting man. He was a man to be feared.
Yes.
Okay, that's why they called him the Impaler.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this whole entire thing is he was actually called Dracula, but Dracula is a very interesting name for him, because that means, son of Satan.
Right.
Okay, that's not a very good name. Being the person that you are. But, he did make a name for himself in that regard. And so, of course, he was a great strategist in war.
Yes.
Okay, so, of course, the movies and everything that has been birthed from that show us good examples. But again, I'm kind of wondering about the character of vampires.
Right. Okay, expound
So-
on that. Expand on that.
Well, I mean, for an example, Blade in my opinion, is a very good person of character.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, he's all about dealing with vampires because he has a personal vendetta.
Right.
But he doesn't want to mess with any humans.
Right.
So his goal is to save the humans' lives by dealing with these vampires. And honestly, he's not going out doing anything. We're talking about blood now because he's going to need that.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets this artificial blood that, for him to be able to take on a regular basis to keep him from losing his mind or doing something he will regret.
Right. So he's very, very conscious of still kind of being a good guy.
Exactly. And this is a morality level that I have not seen in a whole lot of vampires.
Right. Right.
Okay, so we're talking about every single vampire movie that I've seen. I have not seen any really high morale.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Most of them have some type of objective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where the story kind of surrounds that.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting to see what Morbius is going to do. From what I understand from the trailers, he was a man of good character.
Yes, a doctor, dedicated himself to helping others, had this affliction, and was trying to cure himself and other people.
Yes. And so, but in the animated series and in the comic books, I've seen that there were victims there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, victims of circumstance, because he has to have this plasma, he has to have this blood, and they were unfortunate victims.
Right. Right.
Okay, this is not so with Blade.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there already is a difference there.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this movie really doesn't display that. Okay, based on the trailer, it really didn't. But again, it all goes back to what type of character is he going to have.
Yeah, exactly. This will matter and how they'll play it off. And so let me ask you, what do you think is the root of American culture's obsession with vampires?
To me, I believe that people are looking for, something that's above the mundane, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Vampires, lore, have been around for a long time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I have not seen it being anything Afrocentric. In other
Right.
words,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I mean by that. But the fascination with that, I believe, is something that is it's mystical. It's powerful,
Yeah.
and I think people like that because they're looking for something like that. Because, in my opinion, people see that vampirism is something more of a fascination than werewolf, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Total bestiality, right? It's total beast mode,
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. And that's kind of what I get from that. Out of all the things that I've seen, because of course, every Halloween we always see bats all the time.
Right.
There's always at least throughout my childhood, I've seen some type of vampire type of character.
Right.
There was an old TV show called The Munsters.
Oh yeah, absolutely remember that show.
Okay, yeah, and you would see some type of vampire there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to me, I just think that goes along with American culture.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I see from that.
Yeah, it's weird because, earlier representations, particularly of like the werewolf, was always about, embracing that animal side and the freedom that kind of came with it. I mean, that's kind of really where the werewolf kind of existed. And it was possible for that, as far as curses go, if you could get yourself out into the forest, away from human civilizations, you were just dealing with other animals, and now you're just another predator out on the hunt, right? A nocturnal predator. And that's kind of changed, whereas early vampires to me showed vampirism being more of a curse because you were so removed from what normal society was. Like when we go back to was it Bram Stoker's Vampire, right?
Yes.
That character was still very conflicted. He was a very cursed character because he knew what it was like to, be a man and to walk around among, just normal society. And he still had an appreciation for that. Although it did open him up to, the creatures of the night. But there was a trade-off that we clearly saw once you got your vampiric abilities. Now they've kind of taken that part of it away where I can be a vampire. I can enjoy maybe even the sexual side of being a vampire without having any of the downside of being a vampire. That's kind of where it's gotten, where it's, because to see I never would have thought I'd see a series where a teenage girl was in love with a 300-year-old vampire. That seems crazy. But that's kind of where, that's kind of weird, because what they moved away from death, which, yeah, you're not really supposed to want to be around death too much, or someone who's dead, or we pretend like, this isn't cold flesh, right? We, what I'm saying? We're kind of removing some of what the human elements about attraction are. They ignore them so that they can have a more physical affection with vampires.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the difference between vampires and werewolves, I'm going to be honest with you. I would rather be a vampire.
Yeah, look, you can own property. You can get rich being a vampire.
Okay. Yeah, the vampires to me are, out of all the things that I've seen about them, they're actually really cool, man. I mean, they're business owners.
Yes.
They're
yes.
They're very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
They have money.
Yes.
This kind of stuff.
The best dressers. They're the best dressers out there.
Yeah. They're classy.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But the aspect of werewolf, well, I can tell you, yes, werewolves they're in beast mode.
Yeah.
And the bad side about being a werewolf is you have no idea what you've done.
Right. Right, because you completely give into it.
You completely give into the instinct of your animalistic nature, and and I've seen out of all the werewolf movies I've seen, um, honestly, I've never seen a happy werewolf.
Right.
I've seen them always angry. Like I said, in this beast mode thing, and unfortunate people have had to succumb to this area of violence, because once they turn into the creature that they do, they have no sense of control.
Yeah.
They are no, none at all. And so I've seen every werewolf movie that has to do. I said, let me find out what this werewolf's character is. Let me see exactly what's going to happen to him. And every single time they turn into a werewolf, the character is out the door.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Anybody and everybody who's in that proximity, man, is unfortunate. They become victims. Where vampires are very target specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, they're very classy. And what I like about vampires, and I've always liked this about them, they're not messy. They're very clean.
Right.
They keep the whole palace clean.
Oh yeah, spotless. Yes.
You know what I mean? This is a trait that people really should think about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I've never seen a vampire with a messy house.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's some traits there I think we could probably learn from this.
Well, it's funny. Like I think about Eddie Murphy's venture into vampire movies, Vampire Brooklyn, which was a hilarious movie. I thought it was very well done. But even as you become a vampire, you become inherently cooler. Remember Kadeem Hardison's character, who like slowly went through the phases, and at the end of the movie, he was the new vampire, and all of a sudden he had the like the smooth style and the way all that came along with. Now you're a vampire.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something to the enhancement of like your senses, and it's interesting because I had a conversation with a guy about how people view darkness. And, this person inherently believed that there was we had to fear darkness because this is where all the danger comes from. Well, vampire mythology kind of goes directly in the face of that, because what they see when they embrace the nighttime, the lunar powers, is it opened up this whole different world that was, very beautiful, very peaceful, that was very different, but it was a whole different way of seeing the world.
Well, and I guess that would be true in a sense. I can tell you that I've worked a third shift for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Worked at nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a different energy at night.
Right.
So you can kind of understand that from that point of view of being out all night long.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this type of, I can see some aspect of that being, but it's not a negative thing. For an example, I don't think, and this is just me, feeling that, because it's dark or darkness, this is a form of evil, that to me is a myth.
Right.
Because that's not true.
Right.
Okay, but we've been taught this information, and I'm just trying to figure out why do we feel that way? Because honestly, I didn't feel that way at all. I think embracing something like that would help us to become more aware.
Well, I mean, that was my explanation to this guy. I said, when we really think about darkness, go outside at night. And what do you see except your world is 100% enveloped in darkness? That's where we started from. That was actually the start of most myth stories, is this start from darkness. So this was more your birthplace, right?
Yes.
And the light allowed you to start to navigate it and to perceive it. And even the light itself comes from this darkness. So it was weird. And that's what I told him. I said, well, I understood, early humans developed fear. Some of them developed fear to things that they couldn't see. That's a very natural thing to do. Right. I can't see out there. I need to assume that there might be some danger out there that I need to be worried about. And I said, that's normal. But we don't see a complete shift. There's always people who believe an opposite about the same ideology. You need them to exist in case somebody's wrong. So while you've always had a group of people that feared the night, you've always had people who embraced it and had a different understanding of it. He couldn't get what I was trying to explain about not everyone sees darkness as being evil. And I think that's kind of what we see out of vampire mythology, is that they're kind of shedding off, they roll in all black. These are the original goths.
Yes, absolutely. Just like Batman is the exact same thing.
Right.
I mean, he literally said, I am the night.
I am the night.
And I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Have you seen, I've watched Dracula Untold.
Dracula Untold. Was that the one, yeah, I did see. I can't think of the guy's name, but I did see the movie. He was like this is an older, it was done recently, but it's an older setting. He is Eastern European, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. And yeah, I did see the movie. Yeah, go ahead. It was a great movie, by the way. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Because he said something that really resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he said was, everybody likes heroes.
Yeah.
He said, but sometimes what you need is a monster.
Yeah.
That's a really true statement that he said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was talking about exactly what the evil was.
Mm-hmm.
In his time and what he was dealing with. So I saw that movie as him doing, in my opinion, he was doing like a good thing.
Yeah. Because he intentionally sacrificed himself.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That was intentional.
And you see, that's the kind of stuff that I think that needs to be shared more than what we've always have thought, these things are negative.
Right.
Or the night is bad.
Right. Right.
These type of things. That needs to be cleared up, from these movies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I am I support vampirism.
Okay.
I support it because of the things that I've watched and the things that I've seen. Now, of course, there's always going to be some negatives, right? But overall, I'm kind of wondering what Morbius is going to do.
Yeah, I'm very curious about the movie. I'm definitely going to check this out. Like I said, because of the story, and because of the actor, I figured it's going to be a pretty well done flick.
Yeah, he's got some interesting powers, based on what I've heard, and as far as what I've read about him. He has got, in my opinion, some powers that maybe some of the other vampires don't have.
Okay.
And so we're going to see exactly what that's going to be like. For an example, he has an incredible healing factor.
Right.
But he has this hysterical strength.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. Okay. He's a biochemist.
Right.
Okay. So this guy is very, not only strong physically, but he's very strong mentally because this guy is a doctor.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that says a lot about him, and his abilities and the stuff that he's able to do. He's right. And he has a genius intellectual level.
Yeah.
Okay. That's like at the top of the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's not so he's not like some of the vampires I've seen from Underworld.
Right.
And death dealers, and as far as I'm concerned, they were pretty cool, but unfortunately they weren't very intelligent.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, it's just, out of all the stuff that they had, they just weren't not smart. The vampire elders, had it. So I'm, in my opinion, this guy has the knowledge of a vampire elder, maybe.
Okay.
I'm looking at it like that. So I got big hopes for it.
Okay.
To see what it does. Reading about him, reading about his story, it seems all cool and all because remember now, he's doing it from a positive thing from the beginning.
Right, exactly. Yes. This is a good guy at the beginning of the story. That's how he comes out.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think if you take a character and they have some storylines, obviously, where he and Blade are fighting, but they have some storylines where they end up working together. And it kind of is an interesting because you have two of these guys who are relatively high moral fiber, who have this particular type of affliction or this representation, but both in their own right are very much heroes. and how they represent themselves, kind of in that same line of Batman, where it's the guy in the night who's actually in all black that still represents good.
Exactly. That's I guess that's been the objective from the beginning. I guess people need to see that.
Yeah.
But I'm really hoping to see more of the origin of Morbius, meaning that I know we have a story about him on how he becomes Morbius.
Yeah.
But Morbius hasn't been around that long, so I'm trying to figure out, okay, these powers. I mean, for an example, let me just give you a great example. I'm talking about what species of bat are we dealing with here?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
See, that was my question.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Origin. What type of species of bat is this? How did he get infected from this one?
Right.
How did he be able to? Is he getting the abilities from this particular species of bat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because you're using that as your feed for the storyline, so it has to make sense. Let's see if those guys put that much effort into it, or if they let the Mountain Dew kind of run it.
Yeah, I think they're gonna let the Mountain Dew.
Yeah, I think they let the Mountain Dew kind of run it. We know who comic book guys are, so we'll see how they deal with the story. But I think this is gonna be good. I think we should talk about it again. Definitely when it comes, when the film actually comes out, we need to talk about it. And I think, man, we should talk about Akasha next week.
Yes, Akasha. Yes, she's long overdue.
Yeah. So we got Akasha coming up, and then of course, we got to talk about Amunet and how they did her so wrong.
So, I mean, that's yes, that was. Yeah, we talked about that last time.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot too over the last couple of days. About
you have,
yeah, absolutely, because it's so wrong that they just slide her into that villain role in what was otherwise a pretty well done movie. Right, that's the problem. You kind of subtly launch her as this incredible villain when that's not who her character was. So that bothers me a lot.
Exactly. That's, you see why I'm looking forward to Morbius. I just hope they don't do this guy dirty. Right?
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Right? Give him the role that he deserves.
Yeah.
If this is exactly what he's supposed to be, but don't make him, something that he's not. In other words. Let him have character. Let him have some morality. Of course, there's going to be some issues there, right? But he's trying to deal with his humanity, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is a conflict about humanity versus, desire. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really hoping that they do with this, because so far, the stuff that I'm seeing, I mean, it's curiosity. But based on how they did them in the comic books and the animation series, I'm like, I just hope they just do him right. That's all I can really say about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he has some pretty interesting background. He's got some pretty interesting skills. Let's see what he does for humanity, and hopefully, after all this is over with, it's a good movie.
Yeah, I think that's what all of us are hoping for as fans. So I think I have a strong feeling that that's what we're going to get. I think the movie season coming up is going to be really good. Like I said, I'm already down for Shazam, which of course is the DC release. I think that's going to be really good, and I think Marvel has an opportunity for another good character out of this one. So, and we the fans ultimately benefit from it. So, but we'll catch up again, and like I said, we'll start prepping for next week to talk about Akasha next week. So I'm going to prep everybody in the audience so that they know. I got my man again. This is Thursday Night Mythology with my man Teanis Tillmon, and I'm going to drop his information in the description box as well. So if you guys want to reach out to him, but he'll be back with us next Thursday. We're going to talk some more modern mythology. Anything you want to say to the audience before we get out of here?
I am just glad that everybody's tuned in and listening and looking forward to doing more.
All right. Sounds good, man. I will talk to you soon, my brother. Again, have a good night, and I'm looking to talk more mythology with you next week.
Looking forward to it now.
All right now. All right, guys. That was another, excellent. I love talking mythology with my man here, especially as modern mythology takes on different aspects of old stories that we know. There's a part of me that still wants to fight to keep the stories as original as possible. But in light of seeing how stories evolve and people evolve, I guess sometimes we just got to embrace it, even me. And the story of the vampire is changing. His representation as being darkness and darkness itself being evil is starting to change. However we like it, they make wearing black look good. So thank you again for stopping in at Nine World Chronicles. As always, please go to our channel, like and subscribe. Click that notification button until the next time we have some new releases coming out. You guys can be there and enjoy it with the rest of us. As always, I will